Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our 13th and final class overview for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and today we are covering the Wizard. I make these videos about Dungeons & Dragons once a week, typically uploading on Saturdays or Sundays depending on my schedule, with the occasional midweek video that might happen sometimes. So if you like what you see, please subscribe, and that way you won't miss any content I put out in the future. So let's jump right in and talk about our agenda for this video. But first, a little announcement. So as of the time that I am recording this video, we are at 192 subscribers. Now, when I hit 200, which is just a goal for me, I'm going to do a special video. Some of you may have seen my dog's tail bouncing in and out in other videos. I'm going to do a little special build where I'm going to make a sidekick that's basically, I'm going to try to make something like my dog, and it should be a fun and uh, interesting experience to kind of explore the sidekick rules, and I'll share a little bit about my cute pupper. So if you want to see that sooner, again, hit that subscribe button. It's only going to take 8 more, and I will be producing that video. So let's jump into our agenda for this video. So first, I'm going to talk about the wizard class as a whole and kind of give an overview and what I believe the role of the core class is. Importantly, while I'm going to kind of cover the general gist of what all the subclasses do, I'm not going to dive deep into any of the subclass features, and we're going to kind of stick to a more high level concept of what the wizard class is overall. Then we'll talk about the class features of the wizard from level 1 to level 20. And I've broken this down into 5 level sections to make navigating it a little easier. And then I'll talk about multiclassing the wizard before going into a summary and some ratings of the class as a whole. So, class overview and role. First of all, the wizard is an intelligence-based, both known and prepared caster. And they're actually unique among all casters because they function as both a known caster and a prepared caster. Now, why is this? This is specifically because of their spellbook casting mechanic. So, wizards have a spellbook that contains all the spells that you can potentially prepare. So, as you gain wizard levels, you get to add more spells to your book naturally, and you can also potentially spend gold to transcribe more spells into your spell book. So they're kind of like a cleric or a druid in that they have a list of spells that they can prepare from, but that list is a subset of the entirety of the whole wizard list. So in that way, they're kind of both a known and a prepared caster because while you have a larger known list, you have to prepare off of that list. Makes them rather unique and flexible, and they have the potential to potentially learn every spell on their book given enough time and resources. So, the general role of the core wizard class is to be a backline blaster and controller. They have a lot of really powerful and interesting concentration spells that they can use, from summons to hazard areas and that kind of a thing. They also got a bunch of really cool blaster spells and a bunch of very interesting and powerful utility and potentially reality warping things. The wizard has access to the most expansive spell list in the game, and they again potentially have access to all of the spells on the wizard list, given enough time and resources to transcribe them into their book. Now they're not going to be able to prepare all of them at the same time, but they're going to have that flexibility, and they basically have the best spell list in the game, at least in terms of core classes. They also have some extra spell slot recovery options, although again, this is mostly a long rest based class because their main fuel is their spell slots. The general gist of the wizard's spell list, you've got blasting spells, summoning spells, hazardous area spells, whether it's control or damage or both. You've got illusion magic, mind altering stuff, teleportation, enchanting, spells you can use to get information like scrying and that kind of thing, and a bunch of other interesting things. All right, so class features at level 1. What do wizards get? Well, first of all, their hit dice is a d6. This is the smallest hit dice in the game, shared with sorcerer, so this makes them naturally one of the squishiest and most vulnerable classes in the game. They can't take very many hits. In terms of armor proficiencies, they don't get any armor. Much like the sorcerer, you are very squishy and you're pretty easy to hit, generally speaking. In terms of weapons, they get daggers, darts, slings, staffs, and light crossbows. And interestingly, again, this is the same list of weapons that the sorcerer is also proficient with. They don't get any tool proficiencies, and they get proficiency in intelligence and wisdom saving throws. Intelligence saving throws are fairly uncommon, but wisdom saving throws are a pretty important one, especially as you get into higher tiers of the game. In terms of skills, they're going to pick 2 from the following list of 6, including Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. Now, all of these skills, 4 of them are associated with intelligence, and the other 2 are associated with wisdom. So generally speaking, your wizard, in terms of their core class skills, are going to kind of lean into that knowledge type role. Wizards also get their spell casting at first level. They have 2 first level spell slots and get to know 3 cantrips. They can use an arcane focus as a focus for their spells. And this number of spells that you have in your spell book at a minimum is 4 plus 2 times your wizard level. So at first level, you start with 6. And the number of spells you can prepare out of your spell book is equal to your level plus your intelligence modifier, because the wizard's casting stat is their intelligence. Now, importantly, the spell book is something that is unique to wizards that no other classes get. So you can transcribe spells into your spell book, given that you have like a source for them, usually like a scroll or something like that, by spending 50 gold pieces and 2 hours transcribing that spell per level of the spell. Now, you can also potentially replace or copy your spell book. If your spell book is lost, you can transcribe all the spells you had prepared for a cost of 10 gold and 1 hour per level of each of the spells. Otherwise, it's lost. And you can also do the same thing to copy your spell book. It'll take 10 gold per level of spell, and 1 hour per level of each spell you want to copy into a new spell book. So sometimes it can be a good idea to have a backup spell book as a wizard, just because especially if your DM like steals or destroys your spell book, having a backup could be great so you don't lose access to spells you didn't have prepared. Wizards are also a ritual caster, and they have a special ritual casting feature. So in addition to normally being able to cast a spell that you have prepared with the ritual tag by spending 10 minutes longer and it doesn't consume a spell slot, you can also ritual cast spells out of your spell book without having them prepared, so long as your spell book is on your person. So one of the cool things that you can do as a wizard is you can kind of prepare your more combat-based spells while still having all of your rituals in your book, and you'll have them available at all times, which is something that can give a wizard a lot of flexibility out of combat. Wizards also get Arcane Recovery, and this is their class kind of unique extra spell slots, because wizards are all about casting spells, and running out of them would kind of suck, and this gives you a little bit more. What this does is you have a number of basically Arcane Recovery points equal to your wizard level divided by 2, and you round this up. And then during a short rest, you can recover a number of spell slots up to a total of this amount. And the highest level spell slot you can recover is a 5th level spell slot, and you can only do this once per long rest. So at this level, you can recover 1 spell slot, so you basically have 3 first level spell slots at this point. Now, once you get to 9th level, that's when you can start recovering 5th level spell slots, but beyond that, you can actually recover more spells, but again, the spells that you recover the slots can't be higher than 5th level. So for example, a 20th level wizard can recover up to 10 levels of spells using Arcane Recovery. So that could be 2 5th level spells, or a 5th level spell, a 3rd level spell, and a 2nd level spell, etc. So long as the total level of the slots does not exceed half your level rounded up. And you can't do this more than once. So if you don't recover if you use it and say you could recover your 10 levels of slots, but you only recovered 5, you wouldn't be able to use the other 5 levels of slot on another short rest later on. All right, at level 2, wizards are a full caster, so they're going to follow the full caster progression, which you'll be able to see in the spells column there on the right. And they get an extra 2 spells in their book guaranteed per level. And that asterisk just indicates you might have more spells if you had acquired them and transcribed them into your book. But at this level, wizards get their Arcane Tradition, or their subclass. Most of these subclasses have a ribbon feature and then kind of a core class feature. So what are all the subclasses available? Well, out of the player's handbook, there are a whole bunch of them, and there is one for each core school of magic in the game. You've got Abjuration, Conjuration, Divination, Enchantment, Evocation, Illusion, Necromancy, and Transmutation. So out of all of these, the ribbon feature on all of these classes is that you can transcribe spells of that school for half as much gold in half as much time. And then Abjuration focuses on kind of defensive magic. Conjuration focuses on summoning things. Divination focuses on learning and knowing the future, and scrying and that kind of thing. Enchantment focuses on placing enchantments on creatures and enemies and charm and that kind of thing. Evocation is all about those big blasting damage spells. Illusion is about creating illusion spells and deceiving people. Necromancy is usually about necrotic damage and raising undead servants. And then transmutation is about changing the form of things and that kind of thing. And then out of Xanathar's, we got the War Magic Wizard. This is a wizard who's kind of focused on being a balance of abjuration and evocation. It's kind of like a mix of both of them. This is kind of more of like a battle mage, someone who might go out with troops, and is more of a militaristic wizard, even though they're not necessarily martial at all. Out of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we got the Bladesinger Wizard. This is a wizard that it really leans into that spell sword type archetype. So this is one who they get the extra attack feature and get some extra do some extra cool things that encourage you to make attacks, and they have some interesting things they can do with cantrips and that kind of thing. And it's pretty powerful. Although interestingly enough, in my opinion, the most powerful version of a Bladesinger is best played as a full wizard first and a melee fighter second. But that said, a melee first Bladesinger wizard is still actually a very effective character. Also out of Tasha's, we got the Order of Scribes. This is one that is focused around kind of awakening your spell book, and they basically get to make their spell book into a predator drone and fire like spells out of it and that kind of thing. Pretty cool stuff. And then out of the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, we got the Chronergy and Graviturgy subclasses. These focus around the manipulation of time and gravity specifically. Now, it's important to note that these subclasses may not be allowed at all tables, as although they are an official book, these are critical role content. All right, at level 3, we can now recover 3 levels of spell slots using Arcane Recovery. Excuse me, that should be 2 here. And we also get the Cantrip Formulas feature. So the Cantrips Formulas feature, what this does is once per long rest, we can swap out one cantrip we know into any other cantrip on the wizard spell list. So this gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can change up your cantrips as needed based on the day. Now, this is pretty much the only feature that wizards have at this level, other than the fact that they get second level spells here. And so one of the big things with wizards is their class feature table is pretty blank, but one of the big reasons for that is spells are a class feature, and their spells are incredibly powerful. At second level, you've got fun things like Web, Misty Step, and all sorts of other interesting kind of utility type spells and that kind of a thing. It is a fantastic list. You've got defensive spells like Blur or Mirror Image, that kind of thing. You've also got a lot of cool utility and support spells like Sensibility and that kind of thing. And overall, just the general gist of the Wizard's spell list, a lot of the stuff is really good. And honestly, when I've played a wizard, I have found myself wanting way more spells than the 2 I get per level. And so being able to transcribe spells into your book is something that's really fun. And if you have a wizard in your party as a DM, you should make sure that you give them access to the spells that they want. Maybe make them work a little bit for them if they're optimizing too much. But one of the cool things with wizard is you can experiment and try things, and you get to spend your money on spells. All right. At level 4, wizards get their first ability score increase or feat. And they also get to learn a 4th cantrip here. Now, wizards follow the normal feat schedule for most classes, so 5 feats total. And the general priorities that wizards will have on feats, usually you want to increase your intelligence. As your spellcasting modifier, this lets you prepare more spells and makes it easier for you to land spells and for them to stick to enemies. Another thing that wizards really like to get is to acquire a reliable bonus action. Some wizard concentration spells will give you a bonus action every turn, but the core wizard class lacks bonus actions of any kind for the most part. So a feat like Telekinetic out of Tasha's that gives you an at-will potential forced movement is a really, really good pick for wizards, in my opinion. Another priority they have long-term is to increase their durability by protecting their concentration, usually by getting proficiency in Constitution saving throws with a feat like Resilient Constitution, and potentially even taking the Warcaster feat to give you advantage on those concentration saving throws, because maintaining your spells as a wizard is very important. Now, an important thing I should add here, The wizard has a lot of really good first level defensive type spells. They've got mage armor to potentially boost their armor class, so you're not entirely fragile. They've got shield, again as an armor class boost. They've got absorb elements, potentially silvery barbs if it's allowed. And so the wizard is, in addition to be using their spells to kind of control and blast enemies, are probably going to be using spell slots to defend themselves and keep themselves alive. So for this reason, if you're a wizard, you may find yourself wanting to hold back on spell slots and use cantrips a lot. And honestly, this is not a bad thing because a dead wizard can't help anybody. At level 5, we now have access to third level spells. And now we also have those 3 potential slots of recovery with arcane recovery. Now, the third level wizard spells are fantastic, and overall, third level spells are some of the best in the game. You've got amazing things like Counterspell, Fireball. You've got amazing utility like Fly, and you also have some really powerful control spells that come in at this level, like Hypnotic Pattern and Slow. There are just so many wonderful and powerful 5th level spells. You also have a lot of good summon spells coming online here out of Tasha's, and so you know when playing a wizard, I found I want them all, but you really have to pick. Although, again, you do get a lot more spells per level than any other class. You just have to work with your limited prepared slots and kind of pick your favorite spells and use them. But yeah, third level spells is a big power spike for wizards. All right, at level 6, we are wizards get their second subclass feature. And typically, these build on the core subclass of the identity. They build on the subclass identity to a pretty big extent. They're usually relatively transformative to the way the subclass plays, and they usually boost or enhance what you want to do. They're typically good to very good. At this point, each of those different subclasses of wizards is potentially going to feel very different, depending on how heavily you're leaning into the features they provide. At level 7, we now have 4 levels of slots to recover with Arcane Recovery, and we get 4th level spells. There are a lot of wonderful and powerful 4th level spells on the wizard list, things like Banishment, Polymorph, a whole bunch of really powerful summon spells. You've got things like Wall of Fire as well. And so you also have Ralathim Psychic Lance, which is a great blasting plus control spell. And again, so many powerful spells, and even though there isn't anything in their class table here that's listed, getting 4th level spells is a big deal, especially if they're 4th level wizard spells. At level 8, we get our second ability score increase or feat. Usually, wizards are going to be capping out their intelligence at this point and getting it to 20. If it were me, I probably would have started with an odd intelligence, assuming a point by score, and I would have bumped it to 18 at level 4 with telekinetic, and then I probably would have capped it at 20 here, or I would have gotten resilient constitution, depending on how heavily you are getting targeted and how often you need to make checks to maintain concentration. At level 9, it's 5th level spell time and 5 levels of arcane recovery slots. The wizard 5th level spells are again amazing. One of the biggest standouts here is animated objects. This is an incredibly powerful spell if you just animate a whole bunch of tiny objects. It does a whole bunch of damage and can shred a lot of things, but it's not the only great 5th level spell on the wizard list, and they have a whole bunch of really powerful ones. Again, no other features listed here on their table, but 5th level spells are amazing. At level 10, we get our third arcane tradition feature, our third subclass feature. And again, these typically further lean into the identity of the subclass, and they're typically good to very good. Now, the power level varies a little bit. Some of them are better than others, but generally speaking, most of them are things that you will probably use in most combat encounters. And just again, overall, great things to have. And you're also at 2 5th level spells here, following that core progression. And with Arcane Recovery, you can potentially have 3 5th level spell slots per long rest. You also get to know a 5th cantrip here, but again, you also have a lot of flexibility with your cantrips because of cantrip formulas and that ability to swap one out per long rest. It is important to note that wizards don't get any retraining, unlike other classes, but the fact that you can transcribe spells basically means that doesn't matter. At level 11, we are now up to 6th level spells, and from here on out, the spells that wizards get are starting to get into that reality-altering territory. The 6th level spells also include some of the most powerful blasting spells in the game. You've got things like Disintegrate and Chain Lightning. You also have things like create undead here, and a bunch of very powerful kind of utility spells and that kind of thing. And again, overall, 6th level wizard spells, very powerful. At level 12, like most full caster classes, all wizards get it is a feat. If you haven't capped your intelligence by this point, you'd probably be capping it here. Otherwise, you'd probably start taking defensive feats to fortify key saves and that kind of a thing. At level 13, we are now up to 7th level spells and 7 slots of arcane recovery. The wizard 7th level spells, again, are very powerful, although there aren't as many standout damage ones. I think my favorite 7th level wizard spell is Simulacrum, which lets you make a copy of yourself. And potentially you can have your copy make copies of you, and you have each of those copies make a copy of you, and so forth. Incredibly powerful spell, but also very abusable. So talk with your DM if you do want to use this spell, and I would put some practical limitations on it. But that said, once you're starting to get to this level as a wizard, you can start to potentially achieve immortality, especially as we get towards level 15 and beyond. At level 14, we get our final arcane tradition feature, our capstone. These typically lean even further into the subclass identity and kind of enhance the role of what it does, and they're typically very good. And I would say every 14th level wizard will play very differently from any other 14th level wizard for the most part. At level 15, we are up to 8th level spells and 8 levels of slots with arcane recovery. And the 8th level spells, you've got a lot of really powerful ones. But things like Demiplane and Clone, in addition to Simulacrum, if you're using that spell, the wizard can potentially create backup copies of not only themselves but the entire party and have them in a safe place. And this is kind of where you can start to get to that immortality with your wizard, depending on how much time you have to prepare and how many resources you actually have. Again, a lot of really powerful reality warping stuff that wizards get from here on out. Level 16, all wizards get is their 4th ability score increase or feat. And level 17, we are up to 9th level spells, the most powerful spells in the game. Wish is probably the big one here because now you have access to all of the spells in the game that are 8th level or lower by casting Wish. And that is not including the out of the box things it can do. But all of the other 9th level spells that are available are very powerful. Now, unlike other classes, wizards are actually going to get to keep learning more spells from here because you get 2 more spells into your book every level. So you can pick up more 9th level spells or more lower level spells and that kind of thing. But yeah, at this point, you have the power to warp and bend reality to your will. At level 18, wizards get a pretty interesting feature called Spell Mastery. So you get to pick a 1st and 2nd level spell in your spell book, and you can cast them at their lowest level at will without spending a spell slot. And you can swap out one or both of these spells with 8 hours of study. Now, you're not going to be able to do this over the course of a long rest because you probably have to sleep, although if you have the right race, you might not have to. But this means that your wizard could potentially have an at-will shield and an at-will misty step and that kind of thing. And this is a very powerful and very interesting feature. Unfortunately, I don't think many campaigns outside of one-shots get to see high-level play, but this feature is incredibly powerful and really cool. Again, you probably go for utility spells with these. I don't think being able to cast a 1st level spell at level 1 for damage at will is going to be a useful thing. It's not going to beat out cantrips, not by a long shot. At level 19, wizards get their 5th ability score increase or feat, and you also get, as a full caster, get a 2nd 6th level spell slot here. Now, it is important to note, in my other full caster videos, I actually missed this spell slot and the extra one that you get at level 20, but all full casters do get a 2nd 6th level spell slot at level 19 and a 2nd 7th level spell slot at level 20. So, at level 20, in addition to that 7th level spell slot, wizards get their signature spells, which is their wizard capstone feature. What this does is you get to choose 2 3rd level spells in your spellbook as your signature spells. You always have them prepared, and they don't count against the number of spells you can prepare. Now, at this point, we would probably be able to prepare 25 spells. I would like to assume you would have a 20 int, and you have at least 44 spells in your book. So this will bump that prepared number up to at least 20. Well, it'll bump it up to 27. They don't count against the number of spells you can prepare, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level without spending a spell slot, once per short or long rest, and you can otherwise still cast the spells as normal. Really powerful thing here. I think most wizards would probably pick something like, say, counter spell and then a control spell or something like that. But you'd probably want to go with some kind of interesting utility or defensive spell here. Again, counter spell, it's your signature spell, probably really, really good. All right, with all that out of the way, let's talk about multi-classing the wizard. So the minimum stat requirement to take a level outside of wizard or to take a level in wizard if it's not your first class is 13 intelligence. And if you take a level in wizard and it's not your first class, you don't get any proficiencies at all. Now, in my opinion, what classes go best with wizard? And these are artificer and cleric. Now, the main reasons for this I'll talk about in just a little bit. Now, there are some other classes it can go well with. It can also work well with druid, fighter, rogue, and potentially sorcerer. Now, let me explain my kind of reasoning behind this. So, if you are a main wizard, the main things that you want out of a multi-class are as follows. You are looking for durability, potentially constitution saving throws, as well as armor proficiency. If you can get armor proficiency out of a different class for free, it'll greatly boost the durability of your class. And getting constitution saving throws means that you won't have to use the resilient feat on that, although you'll probably still take resilient at a later level to get, say, wisdom proficiency. You also want utility and support spells potentially that wizards don't get access to, as well as easy to grab low level features that are pretty impactful. And you also generally don't want to delay your slot progression, as taking even one level in another class will delay the levels of spells that you know. But if you take levels of another full caster, it won't delay the levels of your slots. So in particular, Artificer doesn't delay your slot progression. It gives you medium armor. It gives you constitution saves. And also its main attribute, intelligence, lines up with Wizard. And a single level Artificer dip at level 1 is a great thing to have on a Wizard. Also, Cleric, in my opinion, works fantastically with Wizard, again, as a 1 level dip, either at level 1 or at level 2. You can potentially get heavy armor from this with the right subclass, but you also get a bunch of utility cantrips and support spells like healing that wizards lack normally. And you also get potentially very powerful first level cleric features. The first level cleric features are some of the best in the game. Now, the ones that can also work with druids also get medium armor just with a single level dip, and you won't delay your progression, although you won't get a subclass feature, and the value of the other spells is somewhat debatable. But if you wanted to take more than one druid level, you could potentially get some really interesting things like wild shape for infiltration and kind of a thing, and can make an interestingly flavored character. A wizard can potentially also like a fighter dip, getting access to constitution saves and heavy armor, as well as potentially action surge to be able to cast 2 spells back to back on a turn is a big deal. Now, I've talked about this before in a lot of other videos, but the way that casting multiple spells works, the only limitation happens when you cast a spell with your bonus action. If you do so, the only other spells you can cast on that turn are cantrips with a casting time of 1 action. That said, you can cast a leveled spell, action surge, and cast another leveled spell, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is something that a fighter dip can potentially do with a wizard. A wizard can also potentially benefit from some of the skill proficiencies out of rogue, and both fighter and rogue have subclasses that get some access to the wizard's spell list, namely Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight. Taking wizard levels on those subclasses will let you lean further into the spellcasting aspect of the character. Finally, if you start your wizard as a sorcerer, you get constitution saves, and you can potentially take, say, 3 to 4 levels to get meta magic to kind of give that extra oomph to some of the wizard spells. That said, the sorcerer and wizard spell lists have a lot of overlap, and this one is not as good as the others, but it still can work. Now, for other classes wanting wizard, the main reason why you might want a wizard dip is mainly access to defensive spells and potentially wizard rituals. And you can also get some powerful and interesting low level wizard features with just 2 to 3 levels and that kind of thing. You can do interesting things like getting portents on a cleric, or I even have a friend who has portents on a barbarian, and it's pretty funny. All right, so Generally speaking, the wizard works best with a small dip, typically 1 to 2 levels, or as a small dip with another class just to get access to those low level spells. So let's go into our summary and ratings. So first up is offense, and I give the wizard a 4 out of 5 on offense. This is because they've got access to some incredibly powerful spells. You can do great damage per round with things with some of their high level concentration spells and summoning spells and that kind of thing. They've got AoE when required, and they also have damage abilities that also contain control effects, especially at high levels. And a wizard is going to be able to do a lot of damage. Now, that said, it's not usually as good single target as some of the martial characters, but you can actually do very, very well if you combine spells in the right way, especially if you work well with your party members. Now, defensively, I give the core wizard a 2 out of 5. This is for several reasons. The first reason, no armor. Second reason, d6 hit dice. Third reason, your only armor option really is mage armor, and you'll probably need to have a high dexterity for that to be effective. The reason it's not a 1-star is because you do have good defensive spells like shield and absorb elements, potentially silvery barbs, counter spell, later on contingency and that kind of thing. And some of the wizard subclasses do give you defensive benefits, but again, I'm not including those. You can get your wizard to a much better overall defense, again, taking a small multi-class dip for armor. Now, control. I give the wizard a 5-star rating. The wizard has the best control spells in the game. Yeah, a wizard is pretty much an unmatched controller in terms of the core class. That said, bards also do a very good job with control with some of their subclasses. But the wizard overall, in my opinion, is top-notch on control. Now, support. This is kind of their ability to kind of support, buff, protect their allies, heal them, that kind of thing in combat. And I give the wizard a 2 out of 5 here. They don't have nothing but, and they do have some rather interesting support and buff spells like haste. But overall, they don't have a whole lot of things that can really help out their allies too much. The main way that you're going to be helping out your allies is by controlling your enemies or killing them. Now, that said, skills. I give the wizard a 3 out of 5 on skills. And this may kind of come as a surprise because they don't really have they don't have any cantrips that enhance their skills. They don't have very good skill proficiencies, no expertise, that kind of thing. And the reason I give the wizard a high rating on skills is because they have such an expansive and versatile spell list that oftentimes a situation where you might be making a skill check, the wizard could solve if they have the right spell prepared simply by casting that spell. You know, a locked door, the wizard can cast knock and unlock it. Need to carry something heavy, rather than trying to drag it, the wizard could cast Tensor's floating disc and just stick it on there and bring it along. You need to go underwater, water breathing. You need to get up a cliff rather than climb the rope. The wizard just casts fly or teleports up. And so, generally speaking, they also do have some. One of my favorite skill enhancing abilities in Enhance Ability. That spell is really great for that kind of thing. But again, the reason I give them a high rating on skills, in spite of the fact they don't have anything that really buffs it, aside from a few spells, is for the most part, there is a spell for that. And there's spells that can solve a lot of these things you would normally otherwise do with skill checks. Finally, complexity. And this is a rating of how difficult it is to play the class. A low rating generally means there aren't very many choices that you have to make in character creation or during your preparation during a long rest, or even in combat. And a high rating means there is a plethora of choices to make, including during character creation, when you're preparing spells, and even during combat. And so a wizard, in my opinion, definitely meets the max 5-star complexity rating. They have a massive spell list. You have a pretty massive amount of options, but you have to curate your own spell list with the spells you have in your spell book. You can only prepare a subset of those. But at the same time, you get to prepare basically more spells than anyone else in the game. You're also very squishy. You need to know what all your spells do. And so overall, the wizard is not a beginner-friendly class, although they are, one of the main kind of flagship classes of the game. If you want to play a full caster as your first character, by the way, I highly recommend Cleric. I think they are the easiest of all the full casters to play. So, thanks for watching. This has been our final class overview on Wizard and our final one of all the classes. what did you think? Have you ever played a wizard? What is one of your favorite things about them? And if you are a DM, have they been frustrating at all for you, especially if they've gotten to higher level? Now, I'm curious what you want to kind of see next in the class overview series. There are tons of subclasses in the game I can dive into, potentially covering 2 or 3 at a time. Um, yeah, so please let me know what you think, what you would like to see next. The planned video for this weekend, I'm going to kind of do an overview of my first 20 builds on the channel, assuming we don't hit the 200 subs by the weekend. So yeah, again, my name is Nathan. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.